Hey guys, welcome back to our next session into OOP. So here's where we started, right? We went over a pretty thorough overview of what it looked like to put everything together from CSS, from the way CSS is taught, right? How to use CSS by itself, um, from just HTML stuff, how to set attributes, how to recall class attributes versus ID attributes in CSS, and going through just the HTML structure of things, and then how to get make sense of all that through JavaScript. So now that you kind of know how the what I call the local stack, right? It's the browser stack of tech. It's the CSS, the HTML side, the JavaScript side kind of works. We're going to really hop into JavaScript, but we're going to continue to use those same concepts as we move along. So I'm primarily in this one, I'm going to hop directly into OOP, which means I'm primarily going to be using a script container, and then we'll just be playing. We'll add stuff here, and we'll be playing with those objects and stuff in the browser. So, what are we going to cover today? Well, first, object definition. Object definition, or what people would normally call a class or a class definition. This is the primary part of how OOP works, how object-oriented programming works. And there's way more advanced topics. I'm not really trying to get to those here. I'm trying to stay at this very base focal level of anytime you would open up like an API, right, of some other software's API, they expose their properties, their methods, and maybe even sometimes their events, like how to trigger certain events, like, oh, when this is loaded, trigger this, or attached to this trigger to go do something else. Um, that's what we're going to focus on. So I'm not going to focus on events. Sorry, not this go around. I don't think. But we are going to look at this object definition, how to establish properties and methods, and then once we've done that, once we've created this class definition, how to instantiate new objects or create new objects that act according to their definition, their design. And that's where the power, the true core power of object-oriented programming really works. So we can cover other topics, I guess, about like inheritance and how to inherit methods, and how to polymorph them, and kind of hijack them and turn them into a hybrid of kind of a new thing. Um, I I don't really see a huge amount of value in learning all of that craziness of what you can do with OOP without really covering this stuff first. And really, I mean, this stuff in and of itself is pretty powerful. So if you can go through, I created definition, I created the properties and the methods and the stuff I want to house inside of it, and when a user calls this method on me, I do this, and that's pretty powerful all its own. That's pretty powerful. So we've we've kind of already used it in the last tutorial. So when we did like a dot set attribute, right? This is a method of the the HTML element that we got. The document.get element gave us an object, an HTML object we can work with, and then we used it and we referenced a method inside of it, and we know it's a method because it's calling these parentheses. So parentheses just mean, hey, this is a function call of sorts, and that's really what a method is. It's a built-in function to the object's class, or to the object itself, and we passed a couple parameters to it, and then we also used properties. So we have the style property of F3, and then as a property of style, there's this background color property, and we set it to a value, and we didn't use any of these parentheses. So already you guys you started to use the idea behind OOP. So that being said, we're going to just begin defining our own objects. And this is the cool part about, in my mind, this is the coolest part about JavaScript, is that we can just do our own thing how we want to do it. So let's see here. I'm gonna try to create like a dialog box class. So let's call this var dialog equals function, and there we go. We have an object. It doesn't do anything. There's no properties or methods to it, but we have an object definition. That's how you create an object definition inside of JavaScript. So let's give this something a little bit more. So I want to pass in a name because or maybe an ID. Okay, let's call it an ID string, ID str. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot ID equals ID str, which is what we passed into the object's constructor. Okay, that's essentially what this function is doing. So it's an anonymous function. It's going to run as soon as we create a new one of these. It's going to run this function, and if it needs to have a string passed into it, which is going to create an ID of this object. So there's some things to take care of. Maybe I won't cover it here. I just want to show the heart of how this stuff is working. So this.id, that's this. So now we can put some defaults in here. So we can say this dot, like we need a location of this dialog box, right? So we need this dot x for the x value. So we'll be dealing in x and y values. I'm just going to put them at 0 right now. This dot y equals 0. We need a width and a height. This dot w equals 0. No, sorry. We need to have something. Let's call it 100. And this dot y, not y, h equals 100. So w is representing my width, h is my height, x and y are the top left of my dialog box, so to speak. And then we can even put in this dot msg, right? So our dialog box needs to contain a message, and that message needs to pop up on the screen. And by default, that message is going to have a generic string attached to it. Okay, and then we'll build a method on that to actually fill in the message, to change the message of this dialog box, to show this dialog box, to hide this dialog box. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and begin building like those methods. How do we build that method? So the first thing I want to know is, how do I display my dialog box? Like, if I'm going to test it and I'm going to make sure it's working, how do I display it? So I'm going to then to create a method to go ahead and display this thing. So dialog dot, and now what we want to use is the prototype. So this is how I prefer to deal with methods, is use the prototype object or prototype property of dialog. Okay, and then I'm going to add my method name, the name that I desire to place here, to be my method name. So dialog.prototype.show. So I'm going to this is what I want to do. I want to show, and then when I execute that, it's going to be another function, so it's going to be a method. And what's going to happen here is I'm not going to place anything in there for now as a parameter. So it's just going to run this function, and it's going to say document dot write sorry, if I could spell, right line, and we're going to use a method of the document object, which is provided by the browser, okay, right line, and then I'm going to add in a string here. So I'm just going to do this for now, just because our space is a little limited. Actually, nah. Let's undo that. I'll just expand my screen here. Okay, so right line, in here I'm going to put in a div. You know what? I will do that. So I'm going to say plus, enter, and then we're going to just do that. And there we go. So div, I want a div, and this is going to be ID equals, I'm going to end quote plus plus another quote, and then this is where I want this dot ID. Okay, I want the ID that I passed into here when I created it to show up as the ID in my attribute for my new element I'm creating in the browser. So this dot ID, okay, that's my div beginning tag, and then I'm going to then just apply style equals. I'm going to use some single quotes here, or I could escape these quotes if I want to. And I need to also do that. Do I do that here? This is a string. Let's try it without for now. So I'm going to start to put in here some CSS. Position is absolute positioning. And what I want to do with this absolute position is I want to set the X and Y, right, according, so I can say left, my left value, and then I can do quote plus plus quote, and then I can put this dot X is my left value, and then immediately after I want a PX because I'm going to tell it its type, and then another semicolon, and then top, and then colon, and then quote plus plus quote, semicolon, and then this is going to be this dot Y, and then I'm going to put width colon quote plus plus quote semicolon, this dot W, and sorry, I needed to put in PX after the width, and then I'm going to put height, and then quote plus plus quote PX semicolon, and then this is going to be this dot H. Okay, so you can see how I'm kind of injecting my HTML with my JavaScript here. So this is one way of doing this. Okay, and then right after this quote, I'm going to say this dot MSG. And oops, sorry, I'm going to add that to the string. I'm going to add, and then I'm just going to close my div and close the method over here, which I did. And I'm just going to put backslash n just in case we write anything else. So let me just get rid of this now. We go to the end here, make sure, okay, that we take care of this space here. All right, so that's what we're going to execute every time we issue show. And the other, I want to add in one more because I want to be able to hide. I want to be able to hide this as well. So we can do it here, I guess. I prefer to leave positioning first. I'm going to say visible, and we're just going to say visible. Oh, sorry, not visible. Visibility is visible, semicolon. Okay, so here's another thing we could do here too. This dot viz equals, by default, visible. That's the value I want. So now in our visibility section, we can do the same thing. plus plus quote, and then this dot viz. Okay, so that's a pretty cool method, I think. Let's see if it works. Nothing will happen right off the bat because we didn't instantiate the object. We didn't create this object. So let's go ahead and just refresh, and nothing happens as expected. But it did read in all of our stuff, right? So all of this script is there, and all of our variables, and all of our functions, and all that. So let's go back to the console here. And we know we've called this dialog. So I have a class that I can instantiate, I can create because it's defined. So now I know I'm going to say D1 for dialog box 1, I guess. I'm going to say equals new, and then I'm going to just say dialog. And then two, remember it's a function, so two parentheses, but I'm missing something. I need a string in there to identify my object. So I'm just going to call this D1. It's my dialog box 1 with ID of D1, and I'm going to hit enter. So now I have this dialog. But we didn't execute the method .show yet. So it's still as expected. I have an object now, and it has all these properties in it, and they're all set based on how I wanted them to be set. And now I want to show this dialog box. So I'm going to say D1, because that's my new object, right? I made a new object of a new dialog, and I assigned it to D1. So I'm going to say dot show, and then it's a method, so I didn't pass anything into it at this point. So I'm just going to get this dialog box, and something didn't quite work. Maybe I didn't write this properly. I don't know. I would have hoped that it would have worked. Let's put something in the message and just see. Uh, oh yeah, I don't have a background color, so everything's white. I don't have a border to like give it a border or anything. So yeah, this is going to be kind of funny. So let's give this thing a background color. I'm just going to say BG equals let's do silver for now. And all right, so we have a style tag, right? And we can say, let me just put it in here, and we're just going to say background dash color, quote, quote, oh, sorry, plus, no, come on, plus, plus, there we go. And then we need a semicolon over there, and then the color here is going to be this dot bg. Let's see if that changes anything. So we're going to refresh. I'm going to hit the up arrow a couple times to create our new D1, and then hit it one more time to say D1.show, and boom, there it is. Exactly everything the way we want it. We just couldn't see it because we didn't have a background color to like differentiate it from the background of the document. But let me show you something here. So I can go and change a property. So D1 dot message, or here, let's do this one. D1 dot, no, we need to do D1 element, right, equals document dot get element by ID, and then our ID was D1, so we know that. And or we could say D1 dot ID, because that's the object's ID. And then, so there it is. That's this one. So when we hover over it, it highlights up here, right? So we could say D1 lm dot remove, I believe. I think we can say remove, can't we? Dot R, remove, yep. That's a method. And it strips it out of the document. So it shouldn't exist in the body anymore, and it doesn't. The body's empty. Like we can't drill into the body anymore. So that's good, because now we want to change the message. So I want to say D1. So the element doesn't exist, so I'm going to say lm equals null, because there is no more element. I don't want it hanging out there in memory. So d1.msg equals what? Hello dad, right? We did mom last time, so we'll do dad this time, right? Hello dad. Okay, so the message changed. So let's go d1.show again, and it's going to rebuild that HTML element, and it has our message inside of it. Perfect. What would happen if I didn't remove it is it would have added another one right on top, and we would have had two objects with the same exact ID number or ID string, and it would be just we would just keep flooding the HTML document every time we issued show. So what we really need to do in our show method is to, well, maybe not in our show method, but maybe we need to create another method that removes, that basically does what we did manually over here in the browser to remove it. So dialog.prototype.remove. I don't really want to do that. Let's say clear. Let's say clear. We're going to clear it out. Equals function. And all this is going to do is, yeah, so we're just going to say elem equals document dot get element by ID, and then we're going to say this dot ID, and then we're just going to, actually we don't even need the element part anymore because it's just a variable for nothing, right? Dot remove. Okay, save that. All right, back on track here. So we got this remove method, and let's just see how this works now. We're going to change a couple of the x and y values after we do a show. We'll change the x and y again. We'll do a show again just so you kind of see the duplicate entry, and then we're just going to do a clear, and or we'll refresh. We'll do it. We'll run the clear. We'll move it. We'll do the draw or the show, and then we'll see if the duplicate still exists. So let's go through that exercise just so you kind of see like why it's important to really remove these elements here. So, and it kind of gives you a better sense of like, hey, shoot, I could use methods. That's pretty cool. All right, moving forward. Let's see here. Let's just refresh. We're going to hit the up arrow a few times. Wait, what happened here? D1, new dialog. D1.show. Okay, so there's that one. This is 100 pixels wide, 100 pixels tall. So I'm just going to move X and Y 100. So D1.X equals 100. D1.Y equals 100. And then let's go ahead and put a message in here. D1.msg is equal to I'm new, or something like that. All right, let's look at this. And D1 dot show. So we added that to the document. I expected there to be a duplicate. Why? Because we just wrote the line. We didn't go back and reference this by ID and then change it and then do anything else. We just added another one because we just called this method, right? So that was that one. Um, so what we could have done is we could have done the initial write line when we instantiate it. So we could put this line, this whole line in here, and it would give us everything we wanted. And then on the show, we can go back, we can get this element by this ID, and then we can go through and change all the style properties through the JavaScript way of doing it without trying to just concatenate a string, and that's probably pretty clean to do. Um, that probably is the way to go about that. And then we wouldn't even have to call clear, is it'll just be there, or well, we could still remove it if we wanted to clear it out of the document altogether. That's fine, it doesn't hurt anything. But let's go ahead and now call d1.clear. Well, what happened? d1.clear. Well, it said document.getElement by ID, this.id.remove. Well, it found the first one, right? It just says, hey, I found one, return it, and then go clear it. Well, there's another one with the same name, so we just got to call it again. There we go. So they're both gone. Just to give you a sense of like why we went through that whole mess. All right, so let's go ahead and let's copy this over. So I'm going to cut it out. We're going to put that here at the end. We're just going to paste that in there. Document.writeLine, that. And then for show, we're just going to say document.getElement by ID. Oops, this dot ID. And then what are we going to do with it? Well, what I'd prefer to do is just call clear. So we'll just say this dot clear, and then we can rebuild it doing the same thing, but I don't necessarily want to do that. So document.get this element by ID. So we're just going to say elem now equals this dot ID, and then we're going to set all of these properties on the existing one we've already written. So let's go ahead and say this dot x. That's not what I want to do. I'm sorry. We're going to say lm dot left. Nope, we're not going to say that either. We'll say style dot left. Come on. Equals this dot x plus px. Okay. And then I'm going to copy that. And this is going to be y. This is going to be w. And this is going to be h. And this is going to be top. And this is going to be width. And this is going to be height. Okay, so there's that. And then we also want to set the background color. lm.style.background color equals this dot bg. Okay, and then we're going to say lm.style.visibility equal to this dot viz. And then our last one is going to be the message, but it's not a style, so it's lm.inner HTML equals this dot msg. Okay, so we have a show method. We might want to just for sake of doing this appropriately, let's see, dialog dot prototype dot hide. All right, equals function. I don't know why I'm struggling typing here all of a sudden. All right, and then we're just going to say this dot viz is equal to hidden, and then we're going to call this dot show. So I don't like calling this show, actually. I'm going to call this draw. So this dot draw. And then we're going to have one that says the opposite of this. of visible, and this will say show. Okay, so we got show and hide, and then we have draw. So drawing is the thing that's going to create this thing, but we can ensure that by just calling show. It's going to call draw, and then whatever visibility is set to, it's either going to show or not show. So that'll work. Save it, refresh. All right, back to business. D1 equals new dialog D1. There it is. So it created it. We expected that. Okay, so now we're going to say D1 dot hide. D1 dot show. D1 dot x is 100, and then D1 dot draw. And it moved it. It didn't copy it. It didn't add another one. It moved it. It changed the property of what we've already added to the document when we created it. So that's the difference in what we did. And now we have a pretty cool element that we can size, we can change its color, we can do all sorts of cool things. Maybe we want to have the font color, right? This dot foreground color equals, I don't know, pink, right? Or whatever. That seemed to contrast well yesterday, so we'll use that. We'll refresh it and we'll kind of do the same thing. So D1 equals new dialog of D1. There it is. Now we say D1.msg equals hello world. I don't know, something like that. D1.draw. Okay. Oh, we didn't use foreground. So that didn't work. Okay. Because it just means that we need to set color here. And this is going to be this dot fg. Save. Do this again. And this will just be D1 equals new dialog D1. D1.msg equals hello world. D1.draw. And there we go. So that's all good. That works now. That's the power of properties and methods in OOP. So next video, we're going to wrap this one up right now. Next video, events. I want to show you how the browser uses events and how we can set up a way to grab a hold of browser objects, a browser tracking what's happening in the browser from like mouse clicks and button presses and that kind of stuff. And then the following video, I want to show how to tie both of these concepts together and then start really interacting with these objects that we just created. So that's my next two goals. I might combine the two this next video. I know these videos are kind of getting long, but it feels like I kind of have to just go through this process and expose you in a few different ways. Again, this is probably more aimed at from the beginner up. So I'm sure a lot of this you're like sitting through like, yeah, come on, work through it. So this OOP series is kind of just going to be that way. I might circle back around and try to make some summary videos for like the more advanced users, so it's a little easier to sit down and watch and just like, okay, I see what he's doing, I could do that. Just follow along and go and do. But to get some of the exposure to what's happening here when you're new, this is kind of this is needed. I mean, you need to kind of have someone hold your hand and walk you through it because it's not second nature to you yet. So anyway, I'll stop rambling on that front, but I do feel bad for people that do know most of what we're doing and they're sticking around to find out like, hey, you could have told me that in 5 minutes or less and you spent 40, right? I get that. That's not some place where if you're already at this level, you're going to be wanting to spend your time to find out 5 minutes worth of information. So I'm really thinking hard about like how do I circle back around and just kind of make the the beginner's intro to this, and then the intermediate to advanced, just kind of summary of all of the same stuff. So um, just be patient with me. Realize that I'm really just trying to make sure that if you come at this knowing nothing, you can come into the series and start to know something, start to be able to use this kind of power because it's been explained thoroughly enough for you to be able to digest it. Um, so I'm going to stay on track with this one. We're going to keep going through enough of this to just basically tie this together, get to these events, see how just browser events work. And then, like I said, I think we're going to create another video after that one and show you how to tie those browser events back to these objects that we're creating. So, uh, yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing out these last two videos because then I think I can circle or I can clear my head enough to just kind of circle back around and maybe just make one or two kind of summary videos that just show like here's the things we've done, but here's what we did, here's how we did it, and here's how it works. And be done instead of spend 40 minutes or better or whatever. So, on average, going through the ins and outs of every part and piece of this. And these videos where we've done that, they'll always kind of already be produced and already be out there. So I think it'll be a good fit. Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and cut that off here, and we'll pick you up on the next one. Take care.